It's hour number 2, live right here on this Monday on the early line on SportsGrid. I am Ben Stevens. He is Donnie Rightside. Thank you for joining us all across the Spiz Grizz network. A doubleheader of NFL playoff action on this Monday to end out Super Wild Card weekend. One game was expected, a Monday Night Football finale in Tampa between the Buccaneers and the Eagles. One game was postponed by a day based on wintry western New York and heavy lake effect snow up off the shores of Lake Erie in Orchard Park. The Buffalo Bills and the Pittsburgh Steelers, a game originally slated for yesterday afternoon, postponed based on the weather, will be played today, 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. Now the new scheduled kick in Buffalo between the Bills and the Steelers. So on this Super Wild Card weekend of NFL playoff action, Donnie, 3 consecutive games with a doubleheader of postseason action.
Yeah, I love it, man. It's great stuff here. And also, sometimes you do get a little bit, oh, come on, what is this? Because we had to wait on Saturday to get to 4:30. Then we had to wait on Sunday to get to 4:30. It's a little bit anticlimactic because you just want that first football game. But if you make it through, like yesterday, without a 1 o'clock game, you're like, awesome, man. You get a doubleheader here on a holiday Monday, and you're going to see some interesting cold circumstances once again in Buffalo. Will they even have the stadium clear? Because I can tell you right now, the Buffalo fans, if there is some snow still left in that stadium, which I know there will be, you are going to have some fun and interesting times from Bills Mafia during this one, with a lot of stadium announcers saying, please refrain from throwing snowballs onto the field, which then means an avalanche of snowballs come down onto the field. And also the Philadelphia Eagles tonight against Tampa Bay, many question marks there. Doubleheaders are always much more fun here, Ben.
A little Monday afternoon football as well, 4:30 p.m. Eastern time, that kick in Orchard Park. Let's welcome in our SportsGrid radio audience, Sirius XM Channel 159, all of our radio terrestrial affiliates now in the mix as well. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. So here is what we have at the end of the 4 games already completed on Super Wild Card weekend and what is in store for the divisional round. We think that as of this moment, both of the 1 seeds will be in action on Saturday of this upcoming weekend in the division round. A game we know is set, is in Santa Clara, the San Francisco 49ers, the number 1 overall seed in the NFC, hosting the 7 seed, the Green Bay Packers. The Niners right now booked as a 9.5-point home favorite for that Saturday night cap, the over-under 50.5. If the Buffalo Bills, who are booked as a 10-point favorite today against the Steelers, just take care of business and win outright at home, it will be the Texans and the Ravens, Baltimore the number 1 seed in the AFC after the opening weekend bye, hosting Houston in the first game up of Saturday, and it would mean that Sunday night football that kicks at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time next Sunday would be the Chiefs and the Bills in Orchard Park in an AFC divisional round rematch, and it means the Lions would host the winner of the Buccaneers and the Birds tonight. That game is slated for that time. The Lions will host for a second consecutive weekend whoever wins in Tampa between Philly and Tampa Bay later today. So that's what we know, Donnie, entering next weekend in the divisional round, with the matchups in the AFC still to be determined, based on the result today in Buffalo.
Yeah, it should be fun to watch it play out. And again, you're watching some of these teams that are at home saying, I wonder who we're going to play. You're scouting 2 different teams. You could get hit with that upset here. We'll see if the Steelers can bring the pain against the Buffalo Bills. And by the way, we'll get into this game in a little bit, but I do think this game today actually helps the Bills more than what we were going to see if we had a winter wonderland on Sunday afternoon, where you made visibility, low visibility on the field, 7 to 8 inches of snow coming down during the football game, 50 to 60 mile an hour winds. That would have been interesting to watch, but clear conditions usually favor the better team, which is the Buffalo Bills. But it'll be fun to watch it play out. But again, I can't, divisional round weekend for me, which is next weekend, because the big boys, as I like to say, come out to play. In the past, it was the top 2 teams because they got the bye, but now the guys sitting at the top of the totem pole come out to play. So I'm looking forward to it as well. Love Super Wildcard weekend with the extra games, but next weekend, that's when you really get into, we really don't have that upset alert here because these teams really mean business now.
The winner of today's game in Buffalo between the Bills and the Steelers will play on Sunday to accommodate the short week of rest. It just means we will figure out the playoff matchups based on today's results. San Francisco, still the Super Bowl favorite, plus 190. Baltimore back by 80 cents, plus 270. After the victory in Arrowhead, the Chiefs moved from a 10-1 number to plus 600, which is the same price as of this moment for the Buffalo Bills at 6-1. The Lions round out the top 5 at plus 1,000. I expect Buffalo to be a short, probably less than a field goal favorite next weekend in a potential rematch in a divisional round game against Kansas City. But at the moment, the two teams have the same price. We will preview both of the games on this Monday doubleheader to end out Super Wild Card Weekend here in this second hour. Now some other NFL news and notes. Just 1 week ago, the Michigan Wolverines won its first national championship since 1997. And in that past week, it has been a celebratory time in the state of Michigan for football, with the Lions winning their first playoff game in more than 3 decades yesterday. And J.J. McCarthy, after one of the most accomplished careers in Ann Arbor, has declared for the 2024 NFL Draft. I thought, Donnie, he might come back to school, but you rise when the stock is at its highest. J.J. McCarthy will go to the NFL in 2024.
And also, you have to take in mind of this, because if you're just looking at statistics and numbers here, you would say, like, wow, J.J. McCarthy can't be an NFL quarterback. Look what he did. Well, based on that, like, Bailey Zappi should be the best player we've ever seen at the NFL level because of how many yards and touchdowns he threw for. We understand that. And you're right. The stock is high right now. You're coming off a national championship here. You know you have a live arm. You're an athletic kid. You won a championship. And in front of the chalkboard, he's probably going to be a big winner because, obviously, he was the guy leading that team, it felt like, when Jim Harbaugh was out. Those are a lot of things that NFL, GMs and front office people look forward to having. I don't know how great he's going to be in the NFL, but if he came back to college, he would get more NIL money. I get that. But sometimes you want to leave at that high mark. He's going to be able to go back to Michigan for the next 50 years and sign autographs and do whatever he wants there and live off that national championship. So good for him going to the pros. I think it's the right move for J.J. McCarthy right now.
A 3-time Big Ten champion, the 2023 Big Ten Quarterback of the Year, the Rose Bowl MVP, a national champion, a 27-1 record as a starting quarterback over the last 3 years in Ann Arbor. Blake Corum also declaring for the 2024 NFL Draft yesterday. Some changes to come for the Maize and Blue. Of course, the biggest question mark for Michigan this offseason is the status of Jim Harbaugh, who will be in Los Angeles today to interview for the head coaching position with the Los Angeles Chargers. We will see what Harbaugh's NFL future looks like the remainder of this offseason. I agree with what my co-host, Donnie Rightside, just said. Now a couple of basketball recaps up next. Sat down with Nick Saban for a lengthy interview. You have spoken to Nick Saban multiple times throughout his career. How surprised were you?
I mean, he's not going anywhere, I don't believe. And at the end of the day, very surprised. Athletic department surprised. Talked to a few people, Alabama folks, late last night, early this morning. Very surprised. Didn't see it coming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro football today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
This is one of the hardest jobs in all of football. You are replacing Bear Bryant. You are replacing Nick Saban. You are replacing guys who won national championships, and they still wanted him out. They still wanted him gone.
Mike Shula, you replacing
was a
him?
disaster. Dubos was a disaster.
Gene Stallings.
That's what I mean. They ran him out. He won a national championship, and they ran Gene Stallings out.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Good move by the Clippers, and obviously, folks, they have Tyronn Lue, who I think is one of the best coaches in the league. And I'll say this right now, folks, the way they're playing, I know Minnesota's in first. I know Oklahoma City's been great. I know Denver's been fantastic. But the team I'm thinking right now that could actually come out of the West, if they stay healthy, and he keeps playing like that, it's Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
What did you think when you saw Lawrence on 3rd and 4th down, those two plays?
When you have a meltdown like the Jaguars have, the clear favorite coming into the season, we all know that, and they choke like they did, and they have this fall like they did, people are going to question what's wrong with Trevor Lawrence. He had a regression. It's not a major one, but he was not as good as last season. What's happened to the play calling?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I am not a Cowboys fan. I did not have a Cowboys ticket on this game. I bet the over, but I'm frustrated watching this game. I'm frustrated seeing the Dallas Cowboys think that this is their optimal game plan.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Before we preview the doubleheader of Monday Night Football playoff action to end out Super Wildcard Weekend, a review of what happened this weekend on the hardwood, chaos in college basketball, and Dame Dollar doing what he does for the first time in Milwaukee. It was Dame time once again. What a day in the state of Wisconsin. The Packers pull off the upset in Dallas, winning outright as a touchdown underdog over the Cowboys in emphatic fashion. And in overtime, the Milwaukee Bucks win 143-142. The Kings, Donnie, took a 2-point lead after two made De'Aaron Fox free throws with about 5 ticks remaining in that extra session. Dame actually inbounds the ball, runs up behind, hoists from 39 feet away, and it goes down. Milwaukee wins at the buzzer in OT, 143-142.
Yeah, unlimited range. I believe Mike Brown also got ejected from this game, getting so angry that I think he wanted to play defense against the referee. And it's funny because his teammates his players were holding him back with big smiles on their face because they love that type of stuff where you're getting stuck up for your head coach. And by the way, they were down about 10 points at that point early in the fourth quarter. So that actually energized the Kings. And yeah, they probably should have won that basketball game. But anytime you leave Dame open, where you can give him that Euro step from around the 29, 40, whatever it was, 40-foot three-point shot, man, it was pure, too. It wasn't even like a prayer bouncing off the backboard. I was like, yeah, this is my range. Watch me splash this.
Mike Brown, by the way, after being ejected, almost pulled off a similar rant to Darko Rajakovic for the Toronto Raptors earlier this week, complaining about the officiating, pulled out his laptop to do a film room session with all the media around to explain exactly what his issue was. I love it. He's going to be fined, but the fine will be worth it. Milwaukee now booked as a favorite in 39 of 40 games. Did not cover as a 4-point home favorite, only winning by 1, just 15-23-1 against the number as the favored side this year, but 28-12 straight up. Second best record in the Eastern Conference. Sacramento booked as an underdog, 7-3 ATS. Elsewhere around the NBA, a matchup between two of the best teams currently in the Western Conference. The Clippers entered the Twin Cities last night, winners of 3 in a row and 17 of their last 20. But the good times come to a close in Minneapolis as the Timberwolves, Donnie, hold serve on their home floor. 16-2 in Minneapolis this year for Minnesota. Second best home record in the NBA, only behind Boston. Second best winning percentage in the NBA, also only behind the C's. 109-105. The T-Wolves get a win.
Yeah, you can't be great every night if you're the Clippers. Love what they've been doing here since that rough start to the season. They're still 25-14, but Paul George in that game only 16 points. James Harden going 4 of 14 from the floor, only giving you 14 points in that game. Edwards well over 30 points here. That's what you're supposed to do. If you want to win the Western Conference, even though these games we talk about, oh, Ben, it's only January. What's the big deal here? We'll see them later in the playoffs. Like, no, you rack these up and you file them away in your brain by saying, like, yeah, remember that time where it was a close game? They charged in the fourth quarter, scored 37 points, but we still held them off for a victory here. You need as many of these wins as possible because, quite frankly, you don't know if you even need that at the end of the season in some of those tie-breaking scenarios. Nice win from the Minnesota Timberwolves. And again, you can't bring your A game every single night, and 2 out of the big 3 here for the Clippers didn't do that.
Game high 33 points on the other side for the Ant-Man, Anthony Edwards. Minnesota now has a half-game lead for that top spot in the NBA's Western Conference. 28-11 for the T-Wolves, 27-11 for OKC. Again, what the Timberwolves are doing this year should be paid attention to. 28 wins as well for the defending Western Conference champs and the NBA champions, the Denver Nuggets. The only difference is Minnesota only has 11 losses. The Nuggets have 13, but it was win number 28. And I do think it bears repeating. That's 41 games now for Denver. They're at the halfway point of their 82-game regular season as the Nugs win at home yesterday, 117-109 against the Indiana Pacers. Do not cover as a double-digit favorite. At home this year as a favorite, 11-9-1 against the spread. But Denver does get that 8-point victory.
Yeah, no Tyrese Halliburton. That's going to be really tough here for the Indiana Pacers moving forward. But you're right. We are at the halfway point for the Nuggets here, 17-4 at home. This is what you fight for. This is why they won a championship last year. Home court advantage means something specifically in Denver when you're playing at elevation. And you were talking about ultra efficient here. Look at Nikola Jokic, 12 of 13 from the floor last night, scores 25 points, 12 rebounds, just misses the triple-double by only getting 9 assists. Yeah, only, Ben, 9 assists from your center in the basketball game. It's a good win here for the Nuggets. They'll take as many of those as they can. Hey, nobody feels bad. Oh, Pacers are down their best players. So what? Beat them and move on.
Nikola Jokic is shooting 58% from the floor this year. The efficiency is wild. 3 players for the Nugs scoring 25 points. Michael Porter Jr., Nikola Jokic, and Jamal Murray. Aaron Gordon poured in 20 as well. All 5 starters for Denver scoring in double figures yesterday. So we're at the halfway point virtually of this year in the association. The Celtics have the best record. They are the favorites to win the NBA championship, plus 290. The Nuggets only $1.30 behind, plus 420. The Bucks, the only other team with a 3-digit price, and under $5 at plus 460. Clippers 11-1, Philly 12-1. Those are the 5 best prices to win the Larry O'Brien Trophy this season. What a wild week it was in men's college basketball. We talked about all of the upsets last week in the midweek portion of the college hoops slate. At the end of the week, Donnie, 15 of the 25 teams ranked inside the AP poll suffered at least 1 loss, including 8 of the AP top 10. We saw that yesterday in Champaign, but before we get there, a look back on the weekend in the Big 12. Houston entered this past week in college basketball, a perfect 14-0, the last undefeated team in all of the sport. They lost twice this week, both on the road, meanwhile, but still twice. Houston goes down in Fort Worth on Saturday afternoon. TCU pulls off the slight upset, winning as a 3.5-point home underdog, outright 68-67. Emmanuel Miller, the game winner for the Horned Frogs, with just 6 ticks remaining in regulation. So after a 14-0 start for the Cougs, Kelvin Sampson's team lost both of their games this past week.
So we're saying life isn't as easy in the group of 5s as it is in the Power 5s, and particularly not just any Power 5, the Power 5 out here. But hear me out on this. I love this for Houston. It's a step up in competition where maybe in the past, Ben, you could say, yeah, we can give 75% effort and hammer these basketball teams. And, you know, we might be the fresher team come tournament time where everybody's going through that gauntlet of the Big 12, the Big 10, the ACC, the SEC. I like this, though, because this is going to build up some scars here for Houston that's going to help them down the stretch. They're going to be battle-tested this time before they even get to the tournament. Let's see if that works a little bit differently than it does in the past year. I'm not worried about Houston losing close games here. You're going to lose games on the road in the Big 12, but I like this for Houston. Knock down that price a little bit here so we can jump in on them later.
The Cougs 46-7 in the last 3 seasons in the American, including last year 17-1. They already have more conference losses in 3 Big 12 games than they had all of last year. Houston returns home to H-Town on Wednesday against Texas Tech, already laying the number. Kansas lost earlier this week to Central Florida in UCF's second ever Big 12 game. They respond in the fog in a top 10 tilt on Saturday, 78-66 over 9th-ranked Oklahoma. KU covering as a 6-point home favorite. Oklahoma, one of those 8 teams inside the top 10 to lose at least once this week. OU lost both of their games.
Yeah, no, look, again, it's going to be tough to win that conference here as you battle through. Now, Ben, let me ask you this quick question, too. Moving forward here, it's still early in the season here for conference games. Do you get worried when teams lose early on? Because, quite frankly, my mind spins opposite, as we just talked about Houston. Close, as long as they're not getting blown away, right? I think of myself and saying, you know what? Now I can get a better price later in the season here to win the conference and win the Final Four. I love it. I love when the good teams lose early.
Not concerned at all. We have seen how difficult it is to win on the road. We will find that middle area throughout this conference season. Speaking of winning on the road, of course, a shout out to our boss, El Jefe, Greg Sussman, and his alma mater, the Maryland Terrapins, going into Champaign yesterday and pulling the upset over number 10, Illinois. Preview of a doubleheader on a Monday up next.
Introducing Sports Injury Central's new feature, The Injury Edge, your NFL matchup cheat sheet. See all the significant injury mismatches broken down by offense and defense to highlight where the advantages lie. All for only $2.99 a week. How can you even consider making a bet or setting your fantasy lineup without knowing the injury mismatches? Go to sixscore.com today and get this week's Injury Edge.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
The wife said we're getting the Stanley Cups, and now they got Stanley Cups in West Virginia.
Yep. They're doing $300 million gross a year in sales.
Listen, man, we don't need that much, man.
They're crushing
I'll take
it.
a little piece of the Stanley Cup. I would drink from the Stanley Cup every day. I'll have inscribed on there. We'll get our BVB inscribed.
Yeah.
Stanley Cups.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
San Francisco minus 120 to win the NFC Championship. It's the Cowboys with the second best number. The Eagles at 7-1.
What the hell's the difference between the 6 and the 7 seed? I need my guys healthy here to make a playoff push. They took the bye week and still won the football game. You want to talk about two franchises going in the wrong direction? The Eagles, ridiculous what they did this week.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Fantasy sports today.
They were saying there's no way he could not possibly do this. He won't hold out.
Pro League Soccer
The
powered by
goal-scoring
Marca.
teams in the league. They have 80 goals so far.
Pro Football Today.
You got to give the coaching advantage to McVay over Campbell, even though they're at home. I mean, come on.
But I think there's some interesting props in this game, but I would be cautious laying this number here with the Houston Texans.
In-game live all access.
In the NFC in terms of these wild cards and in terms of the playoff picture.
In-game live, prime time.
Rich, I don't know, man. This has just been one of those games that doesn't make a lick of sense.
In-game live, overtime.
You want to give the over 3-1 on a pretty good team. It's hard not to take some flyers.
Football full circle.
Well, NFL officials stink. They always will stink, and they'll always ruin the game. That's just part of what it is.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The game that was postponed, now played on a Monday afternoon in Western New York. It's the number 2 seed in the AFC, the Buffalo Bills, playing host to the 7 seed, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Of course, let's dive into why the game was postponed. It is not because Buffalo or Pittsburgh are soft. It is not because we didn't want to see snow football in a 3-0 game. It is because the governor of the state of New York ruled that it was illegal for other vehicles outside of emergency and medical personnel to be on the streets with a winter weather advisory throughout a 48-hour span starting on Saturday afternoon. That winter weather advisory is now over, but it does not mean the weather is all that much better than what it was expected to be Saturday and Sunday to where things are on this Monday in Orchard Park. Donnie, I just saw a video of Bills Mafia up bright and early on this Monday morning before the sun even rised to scoop and shovel out the stadium, and there is still snow coming down. There is still so much snow inside Highmark Stadium for a game that was scheduled for Sunday, now postponed until this Monday, slated to kick at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So, Donnie, has it at all changed your estimation of what this game will look like based on the delay, based on the weather we expect?
Yes, it really has, because we were going into this game saying, okay, they're going to play. The snow's going to come down, 25-mile-an-hour sustained winds, 50-mile-an-hour gusts, and that usually brings in the underdog into the equation. If you're not as talented, but you do have a couple good running backs, who knows what can happen? But let's also go into these dumbbells that talk about this game like, oh, man, it would have been so great to watch, as Ben astutely pointed out. And shout out to people like, see, Buffalo, this is why you build a dome. Newsflash, the game would have been canceled anyways, but you couldn't drive to the stadium. I don't care if you had a dome on the stadium or not. I mean, some people just don't think things through at this point. Yes, we want to see snow football, but not at the expense of people getting caught on the highway and you have to use extra resources. Now, shout out the governor and the mayor here, because this is where it gets even more fun. This is how we know, like, the Buffalo Bills are an institution in Western New York. And same thing with the Pittsburgh Steelers and, quite frankly, every NFL team. The Steelers were waiting on the tarmac yesterday. It was basically what they were waiting for. Was like, we have to bend the rules because it's illegal to travel in this county, but go ahead and we'll get your police escort and you can come into town and play this football game today. So I did get a kick out of that. That'd be like, Ben, you calling up like, hey, look, I got to get to work. You try that, Ben, we're going to arrest you the minute you drive down your streets. Like, hold on now. We got to make sure these guys get into town. But yes, getting back to the initial point of the weather conditions are still going to be quite chilly today. 20 degrees at kickoff, no precipitation in the forecast, but also winds, Ben, under 10 miles an hour sustained, which means you can throw the football, which again, I think does help the scoring. But also, as I said, the game today really helped the Buffalo Bills because I think they're the more skilled team. They'll be able to operate their offense more fluidly now, and I think it gives them a nice advantage in this one. The total's risen up, obviously, and rightfully so, to what we expected on Sunday if that game were to be played, but also the Buffalo Bills still getting there at that 10-point favorite. Now you can look and say, okay, clean slate here. Buffalo is the better team. They should win. Not saying it's going to be a blowout, but I think this helps the Bills more than it does the Steelers.
So those are the changing numbers that we now react to here on the early line. As we left on Friday, the number ticked below double digits, 9.5 in favor of Buffalo. For the reasons that we laid out, for one of the reasons Donnie picked Pittsburgh as his moneyline underdog in the pick six. Because there wasn't going to be a ton of offense expected. And if there's not all that many points, the margin is not all that wide enough. The Steelers can keep this game competitive. Now we are at a full 10-point spread in favor of the Bills. When we left on Friday, the total was 34.5. It has risen by 4 points all the way up to 38 and a hook. So, Donnie, do you expect to see points? Do you expect to see an over between Buffalo and Pittsburgh today?
Here's the crazy part about it, Ben, which sometimes what we just watched a few days ago sort of clouds your mind because we're saying to ourselves, oh, it was minus 37, minus 27 to Kansas City. This is balmy. It's not really balmy at 20 degrees kickoff with a real feel that's probably going to be down around, 5 degrees or 6 degrees. It's going to be cold. But as we know in football, Ben, it's not so much the rain we worry about and or the snow. It's the windy conditions, which will be subsided tonight, which is great. And the one thing that you bring up too, Ben, is we always love it as a society where the media is going to push that narrative Look how much did you see the field? There's not going to be any snow in the field today. So don't be thinking like, oh, the field's going to be frozen over. They can't play on it.
Right.
That surface will be fine today. I'm interested in seeing how much offense we do get because, quite frankly, the Bills can be explosive when we want to. If this was the Steelers' offense, Ben, we had Kenny Pickett and or Mitchell Trubisky, no, I would say it's a dead cold under. Now, that number is now getting interesting where you're not stealing it at 32.5, 33.5, right? So I do still think there's a chance they get over the total because, again, Mason Rudolph and that Pittsburgh offense, when conditions are apparent, you can throw it. They'll be able to move the football against the Buffalo Bills. But keep in mind, this is a playoff game. Things always are a little bit different here. And again, still in the elements. Even though that 19 degrees and again, 10-mile-an-hour winds, that's still freezing cold temperatures there. And we'll see how they handle it.
It's not like we're playing a game now that was postponed by 48 hours, or at least the postponement happened 48 hours ago, about 24 plus hours from when the game was slated to start. Now from a game that was going to feature winds of 50 miles per hour, and now we're playing in 50-degree temperatures. But that is the big point. And that is the reason, Donnie, the total was dropping as quickly as it was entering the weekend. Not the snow expected and the accumulations, but the winds being sustained around 20 to 25 miles per hour. That is not going to be the same amount of gusts that we have today. Still some snow falling at this moment in western New York, supposed to taper off by the time we get closer to kick around 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. So that is the weather forecast live right here on the early line with your meteorologist, Donnie Rightside and Ben Stevens. Here are the numbers. Buffalo booked as a touchdown favorite or more 8 times throughout the regular season. The Bills, 6-2 straight up, meaning 2 outright losses when they were favored to win a game by at least 7 points, and just 2-6 against the spread. It's year number 17 under Mike Tomlin. We know how good the Pittsburgh Steelers are as an underdog, both 6-4 against the number and straight up when booked as a dog this year. Again, we shared earlier in the show, Pittsburgh, one of 4 teams now alongside the Packers, Texans, and the Ravens to be booked as an underdog multiple times this season and have a winning record outright. But the Steelers have never been booked as more than a 4.5-point underdog. In their 4 games entering the regular season finale against Baltimore that featured some nasty weather as well, the Steelers went over in all 4 of those games. Of course, they won their final 3 games with Mason Rudolph as the starting quarterback, and the ground game was very important. The Steelers covering in all 3 of those final victories. So from Mason Rudolph to the other guy, Josh Allen, 223.5 is passing yards prop, 38.5 the number on the ground. Josh Allen throughout his playoff career, Donnie, a 4-4 record, 20 total touchdowns, but something that has plagued Allen and Buffalo in their overall outlook, 6 turnovers. Of course, the Bills have won an AFC East divisional crown 3 consecutive, now make it 4 consecutive NFL seasons, but in the 3 previous playoff appearances, they have never won an AFC championship. That is what they are hoping is different this time around in Western New York.
Yeah, and you're also going to get a team in the Pittsburgh Steelers that has played very good football down the stretch in must-win situations with Mason Rudolph. They actually look like a competent offense here. But let's make no mistake about it. Like, there's a reason why we put that graphic up there, and it was Josh Allen and not Mason Rudolph or Najee Harris. We'll get to them in a second. This is what you pay this quarterback for. These are the games you are supposed to win. It's colder conditions with some wind out here. You know, again, the perfect quarterback would be, it's Josh Allen. And also, I always get back to this point, Ben. Weeks 5, 6, and 7, weeks 4, whatever it would be early in the season. Hey, Josh, we don't need you to be Superman out there. You don't need to carry the ball 15 times in this game. Today, and if you need a win, you might be able to carry it 15 times here. So all those Josh Allen props are live. And quite frankly, I probably like his anytime touchdown scoring market prop and also his rushing prop more than his throwing props here, knowing that when they get into the red zone, of course it's going to be tougher to score. Yes, you want to throw touchdown passes to Stephon Diggs on the inside or on the outside, inside, whatever you want to do, a slant pass or an out. But if you are Josh Allen, don't be surprised. 5-yard line, Ben, we're calling quarterback keepers. We're on the 1. We're not handing that football off. It's going to be a quarterback sneak. Josh Allen knows in order to get to a Super Bowl, he's got to be Superman. He just might be able to be Superman today, Ben.
15 rushing scores this year for Allen. He has scored in 12 of the 17 regular season games for Buffalo. Did not score in the regular season finale in South Florida against Miami, but had scored 8 rushing touchdowns in the 5 games prior. Also 38.5, a number that he has gone over in terms of the rushing yards in both games in January so far for the Bills. Mason Rudolph on the other side, the passing yards number today, Donnie, not 223.5. but 170 and a hook. Still not expected to do all that much. My focus still on Najee Harris. 60.5 is rushing yards prop in the 3-game win streak for Pittsburgh to end out the regular season. The reason the Steelers earned a wild card berth in the AFC postseason, Harris had at least 78 yards on the ground. And in the final 2 games of this year, $122, 2 touchdowns against Seattle, $112 and a tud in the regular season finale against Baltimore.
Look at those carries, Ben. 26 and 27 in back-to-back games, 100 yards in those games, and also 3 straight games of at least 1 touchdown. It's got 4 total touchdowns in those 3 games. He's established himself once again as that clear back here. I like Jaylen Warren. I think he's a competent running back and a great person to spell Najee Harris. But no longer do we talk about, hey, the better back is, Jaylen Warren. He's more explosive. Stop it. Your team is going to go as far as Najee Harris carries you, and I would expect him to get at least 20 more carries in this game in Buffalo today.
I'm intrigued to see what the aerial attack looks like for Buffalo today as well, Donnie, because when you think about the Bills with the number up for Josh Allen, what does that mean for Stephon Diggs? Dalton Kincaid, the rookie tight end, at 36.5. That's the first game on this Monday to Tampa. Up next. Sat down with Nick Saban for a lengthy interview. You have spoken to Nick Saban multiple times throughout his career. How surprised were you?
I mean, he's not going anywhere, I don't believe. And at the end of the day, very surprised. Athletic department surprised. Talked to a few people, Alabama folks, late last night, early this morning. Very surprised. Didn't see it coming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby. The money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
This is one of the hardest jobs in all of football. You are replacing Bear Bryant. You are replacing Nick Saban. You are replacing guys who won national championships, and they still wanted him out. They still wanted him gone.
Mike Shula,
Mike Shula was a disaster. Dubos was a disaster.
Gene Stallings.
That's what I mean. They ran him out. He won a national championship, and they ran Gene Stallings out.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Good move by the Clippers, and obviously, folks, they have Tyronn Lue, who I think is one of the best coaches in the league. And I'll say this right now, folks, the way they're playing, I know Minnesota's in first. I know Oklahoma City's been great. I know Denver's been fantastic. But the team I'm thinking right now that could actually come out of the West, if they stay healthy, and he keeps playing like that, it's Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
What did you think when you saw Lawrence on 3rd and 4th down, those 2 plays?
When you have a meltdown like the Jaguars have, the clear favorite coming into the season, we all know that, and they choke like they did, and they have this fall like they did, people are going to question what's wrong with Trevor Lawrence. He had a regression. It's not a major one, but he was not as good as last season. What's happened to the play calling?
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
I am not a Cowboys fan. I did not have a Cowboys ticket on this game. I bet the over, but I'm frustrated watching this game. I'm frustrated seeing the Dallas Cowboys think that this is their optimal game plan.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
So one game was scheduled in terms of the NFL playoffs on Super Wildcard Weekend for this Monday. One was postponed from Sunday. That was the first game of now this Monday doubleheader in Buffalo. It's the Bills and the Steelers. The originally scheduled Monday Night Football finale remains in Tampa. It's the Buccaneers and the Philadelphia Eagles. The Bucs, champions of the NFC South for a third consecutive season. They will be at home to end out Super Wildcard Weekend. They're the 4 seed in the NFC. The lower seed, but the top wild card seed, the defending NFC champs, the Philadelphia Eagles, a road favorite, laying 2.5 points. The over-under, 42.5. Donnie, when we spoke on Friday, this number was a flat three, in favor of Philly. The total now on the rise to 43.5. What do you make of that market movement? Only a hook, but an important hook around that key number of 3.
It just tells me how bad a football team the perception is around the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that they are home in a playoff game against the Philadelphia Eagles, who can't get out of their own way or defend anything, are still holding true. And also, Ben, maybe this is a little bit different where you say, hey, the second season is ready to begin. The Eagles washed all those worries away. It's a new season. They'll be excited to play. They'll be on the road, and they have more talent than Tampa Bay, which I do agree. And then you say, well, Donnie, let me tell you this. Jalen Hurts down the stretch hasn't played all that well, and we don't know if he's even going to be able to throw the football Monday night. Oh, fantastic. Where's that spread go? No, still held at 3. Oh, by the way, A.J. Brown, maybe a top 5 wideout in the NFL, one of the best players you have on your team. He's not going to show up. All right, maybe we'll move it a half point now. So help me with this, right? Because, again, I don't think Tampa is a great team. They held on to beat the Carolina Panthers, but they still won the game. That's all they were asked to do here. The week before, they didn't even show up against the New Orleans Saints in a game at home where you were saying to yourself, if you win, you automatically get in and you could take a bye week the next week, and they didn't perform. But the Philadelphia Eagles right now are in shambles, particularly on defense. And I know Darius Slay is coming back here. Avonte Maddox came back in the Giants game. So now you technically have your 3 starting cornerbacks you anticipated at the start of the season. That should help. And linebackers coming back into the fold. But you can't tell me right now that this offense being so disjointed right now is actually going to perform at a high level. Great, Devonta Smith's going to come back. He wasn't on the injury report. But how's he going to get the football here? Are we playing possum all week where this Jalen Hurts injury is nothing and he's not going to be a worry at all when he shows up to the game tonight in Tampa? Is Julio Jones going to be able to perform as if he was A.J. Brown as a starting wide receiver? There are so many question marks. But sometimes, Ben, in this business being around this long, you look at that line and stop questioning it. There's a reason why the Eagles are favored by 2.5, because if the Eagles do play well tonight, they'll win this football game. But they're 1-5 in their last 6 games, and they look terrible, and they're on the road and injured. How are we still sitting here at 2.5? I don't know.
The Eagles lost 5 of their final 6 games to end out the regular season, did not cover in any of those 6 contests. To be in this spot on the road and not the 2 seed in the NFC, hosting an opening round playoff game. And yet the Eagles are the road favorites tonight. In fact, Philly has been booked as a 3.5-point favorite or less 5 times this year. They are a perfect 5-0 against the spread. Philly overall in 14 games as the favorite, just 6-2 ATS. But these 2 teams did face off in a similar spot on a Monday night way back in week number 3. No, not the atmosphere of a playoff game, nor the intensity, but Philly went on the road as a 5.5-point favorite and won by 2 touchdowns, 25-11, covering as at 5.5-point favorite. That was one of the few times, though, this year, Donnie, the Buccaneers did not cover as an underdog. 8-3 against the spread for the Bucs as a dog. The best cover percentage for any team around the NFL, booked as a dog twice or more this year. 5 outright victories in those 8 covers. But the story of this game is maybe not Philly stumbles down the stretch or what this Buccaneers ceiling can be for this year's squad, but just how banged up Philly is offensively. A.J. Brown, as Donnie said, will be out for this game. And my main question is the right throwing hand of Jalen Hurts, who did play in the opening half of the regular season finale against the New York Giants and had his middle finger on his right throwing hand bend in a way a finger should not. When we spoke on Friday, Donnie, there was not a passing yards prop available on Jalen Hurts. For this Monday Night Football finale of Super Wildcard Weekend, it's 219 and a hook.
Hear me out on this, Ben. Here's how you bet this tonight. And this is the wonderful part of the FanDuel Sportsbook and the innovations that they made in the sports gambling industry over the past couple of years. You can bet this game live. So do you want, because, and the Eagles are going to play this coy again. Like in pregame warmups, right? Jalen Hurts, he's going to be spinning it 50 yards down the field. No, I would be surprised if he even threw the ball more than 5 yards just to give that look as, ooh, maybe he can't throw tonight. So you know what I need to see? First drive for the Philadelphia Eagles. Because again, the computers aren't going to adjust all that much. They think they know what Jalen Hurts is going to be about in this game. If I see on the very first drive, the second play of the game, a 15-yard out completed by Jalen Hurts, Ben, you go out and you press the lever on the over on Jalen Hurts props here. If you come out in that first drive and it's 2 slip screens and a 3 and out, then you press the under on Jalen Hurts in this game here. So making a game decision pre-game here, which they didn't let us watch any viewing of any practice footage here, and Jalen Hurts is hiding his hand in his pocket. I need to see more of this because, again, I bring up about a decade ago, Ben Roethlisberger on the road to playoff game against Denver, didn't throw a week, didn't even come out for pregame warmups, uncorked an absolute missile on the first play of the game. I don't want to be duped here, and use the technology to your advantage. You don't have to bet this before the game. You can actually watch a few plays, then come in live on Jalen Hurts with what you think the outcome is going to be.
Absolutely so. In the first game in Tampa, week number 3, Jalen Hurts, 23 of 37, 277 yards, a touchdown, but 2 interceptions. You see 219 and a hook for Hurts, a number he went under in 4 of his final 5 games, including, of course, last week in the regular season finale, only playing that opening half after suffering the injury. 4 touchdowns to 4 INTs in that final 5-game span to end out the regular season for Philadelphia. Made further complicated tonight with not having A.J. Brown out there. Devontae Smith, though, is listed as healthy, 70.5 his receiving yards prop. Dallas Goedert is back, 52.5 the receiving yards number. We'll look at the Tampa side of things in just a moment and what Baker Mayfield might be able to do against the second wrinkle in this equation, Donnie, a Birds defense that was pitiful down the stretch, allowing at least 20 points in their last 10 games of the regular season. Philly secondary, second worst in the NFL, allowing 253 yards per game on average.
Yes, and that's going to be the indicator tonight because you do have some pretty good guns on the opposite side with Mike Evans and Godwin on the opposite side of the field. But if I'm being realistic too, because we have talked a lot about Jalen Hurts and his physical ailments. We know he had that bone bruise in the knee. I don't think that's really going to determine or have a determining factor in tonight. But that finger is something I'm worried about. But also keep in mind, Baker Mayfield on the opposite side, Ben, we're not just dealing with one injury. It's actually 2. He's got a rib injury and also an ankle. And early in the week, much like Jalen Hurts is probably like, hey, man, thank you guys for giving me a chance to get to Monday as an extra day to heal. Baker Mayfield said the same thing. Like, hey, it's a godsend that we're playing on Monday and not Saturday or Sunday. That gives me an extra couple days to heal. So we'll see how that plays into it. But I think you're right here. Your game plan for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is what? Crossing routes until the cows come home because the Eagles can't defend anything over the middle parts of the field. You know what else they can't defend against? A number 1 wide receiver that might chew them up here in Mike Evans. Over the passing yards, anytime touchdown marks all make some sense here. So there's a lot more question marks than answers that we have, but I'm feeling a little bit more confident in that Tampa Bay offense. Why? Because apparently they can pick up a blitz and the Eagles can't. They also have capable wide receivers that are healthy for this football game. And also Rashad White has come on lately also as a pass catcher out of the backfield, which again gives the Eagles linebackers a lot of trouble, which again brings us back to the point. The Eagles are the favorite in this game, and I keep scratching my head, but knowing throughout the years, that's a really good thing when I don't know how the Eagles are favored, but they are. You usually know how that turns out. But again, so many question marks on the Eagles side where it's like, I don't really know what I'm getting out of the offense, or quite frankly, defense either, Ben.
Mike Evans, of course, the leading receiver for the Buccaneers this year, 1,255 receiving yards in the regular season, the 10th year of his NFL career. In all 10 seasons, Mike Evans has had at least 1,000 receiving yards. But Chris Godwin also over the 1,000-yard mark, 1,055. 2 1K receivers for Baker Mayfield, who Donnie only threw in the regular season finale against the Panthers in an ugly 9-0 game where the Bucs did not score a touchdown for 137 yards. They won the game. It's what they needed. They won the NFC South divisional crown for a third straight season. But in the 3 games prior, Baker Mayfield threw for at least 283 yards with 8 touchdowns to only 2 picks in that 3-game window. For an Eagles team that allows 253 through the air, 231.5, a critical number for Baker Mayfield. It's his passing yards prop. It will be key for Tampa's success, in my estimation, tonight. So let's say that Jalen Hurts is not 100% healthy. Still going to air it out, of course, in this football game, but not 100% healthy. And maybe the wide receiver room, of course, not at 100% health either in the absence of A.J. Brown. What do we anticipate out of DeAndre Swift, who in that Monday Night Football game back in week number 3 ran for 130 yards against this Buccaneers defense? His rushing yards prop in this football game, Donnie, tonight in Tampa stands at only 61.5.
Yeah, you're going to figure a lot of DeAndre Swift, right? But if the Eagles are playing coy and Jalen Hurts is fine and you say A.J. Brown is out, well, maybe he doesn't throw the football as much. Look, DeAndre Swift, as you could tell me right now, is going to get 15 carries. He's going to bust through that 60-yard marker here. Now, also, it's not a sieve of a defense, particularly that defensive line with Vita Vea up front for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They don't just give away games like, oh, you can really come in and run. But you're right. When the Eagles played them last time, that was one of those 9 or 10-minute drives to close out the football game in the fourth quarter. The Eagles have that in their repertoire. If that front offensive line is blocking and as dominant as it had been sometimes this year, Swift should be able to have a good game. But I think also the paint by numbers, right, Ben, we like to call if you're entering into this game, what do you like? Oh, probably Jalen Hurts on the ground, Mike Evans in the air, Swift on the ground, which still leaves you to take a look at some guys like Kenneth Gainwell, in the reception game, 10.5. Julio Jones, 15.5. You take a look at that. Why? Because if your finger isn't all there to throw those deep shots, the dump offs are going to be key. And if you're giving up pressure, like we saw the Eagles giving up pressure against the Giants and Wink Martindale's defense, and by the way, Todd Bowles, cut from the same cloth, loves to blitz. Look for the dump outs and the checkdowns out there with some cheap prices. That's what I look at. Even DeAndre Swift out of the backfield, Ben, maybe as opposed to rushing the football.
DeAndre Swift, 1,000 yards, 1,049 yards on the ground this year. Kenny Gainwell, under 400. But do we remember what Kenneth Gainwell did for Philadelphia last year in the run to Super Bowl 57, $112 in the division round against the Giants, 48 yards on the ground against the Niners, 26 receiving, 21 yards, 20 receiving in Super Bowl 57 against Kansas City. Maybe he takes that uptick in production yet again. You mentioned the carries prop for DeAndre Swift tonight as well, Donnie, 14.5. He has had at least 14 carries 10 times this year for the Birds. In 7 of those 10 games, he went over the number of 61.5. And I would say with how good Mike Evans has been, Chris Godwin over 1,000 yards as well, Rachaad White might be the most important offensive player for Tampa tonight.
And by the way, keep in mind, the Eagles didn't take the bye week last week, but an illness for DeAndre Swift. He should be raring to go. No reason why he needs to be a spell or get a breather in this game tonight. I like that. 15 carries or more. Give me that for Swifty.
All right, we'll look at the doubleheader on this Monday. Who do you think is going to win? We hear from the public up next. Sat down with Nick Saban for a lengthy interview. You have spoken to Nick Saban multiple times throughout his career. How surprised were you?
I mean, he's not going anywhere, I don't believe. And at the end of the day, very surprised. Athletic department surprised. Talked to a few people, Alabama folks, late last night, early this morning. Very surprised. Didn't see it coming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run.
That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I
favorite.
don't care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
This is one of the hardest jobs in all of football. You are replacing Bear Bryant. You are replacing Nick Saban. You are replacing guys who won national championships, and they still wanted him out. They still wanted him gone.
Mike Shula, you replacing
was a
him?
disaster. Dubos was a disaster.
Gene Stallings.
That's what I mean. They ran him out. He won a national championship, and they ran Gene Stallings out.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Good move by the Clippers, and obviously, folks, they have Tyronn Lue, who I think is one of the best coaches in the league. And I'll say this right now, folks, the way they're playing, I know Minnesota's in first. I know Oklahoma City's been great. I know Denver's been fantastic. But the team I'm thinking right now that could actually come out of the West, if they stay healthy, and he keeps playing like that, it's Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
What did you think when you saw Lawrence on 3rd and 4th down, those two plays?
When you have a meltdown like the Jaguars had, the clear favorite coming into the season, we all know that, and they choke like they did, and they have this fall like they did, people are going to question what's wrong with Trevor Lawrence. He had a regression. It's not a major one, but he was not as good as last season. What's happened to the play calling?
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
I am not a Cowboys fan. I did not have a Cowboys ticket on this game. I bet the over, but I'm frustrated watching this game. I'm frustrated seeing the Dallas Cowboys think that this is their optimal game plan.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Closing out this second hour live right here on the early line on this Monday on SportsGrid. I am Ben, he is Donnie, and of course this is the SportsGrid app. The SportsGrid app is the ultimate sports betting companion app available for download at both the Apple and the Play Store, or you can quickly scan that QR code on your screen. All of our information and insight available in the palm of your hand as soon as you get the SportsGrid app. To end out this second hour, we love hearing from the people. Second hour, that's hour 2. There's 2 NFL playoff games to end out Super Wildcard Weekend on this Monday. In Buffalo, it's the Bills and the Steelers. In Tampa, it's the Bucs and the Eagles. Who wins each of these 2 games outright? That was the question in Fade the Public. Honestly, not bad parlay prices with a Bills team that is favored by double digits in the first game up in Western New York. Postponed from yesterday, now scheduled to kick on this Monday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And Donnie, at SportsGrid TV on Twitter, most of the public has the Bills, but then it's the Bills and the Bucs, a plus 171 moneyline parlay that is winning this Fade the Public poll at this moment.
And I think it should be here. That was where my vote. Bills and the Bucs. And again, for my pick 6 on Friday, I took the Bucs at +9 in my teaser leg here because I do think the Bucs, for one thing, will be competitive in this game from everything we've seen from the Philadelphia Eagles. But I do understand why it's still 33% of the vote are getting the Bills, and the Eagles are the 2 favorites. But if one thing we also noticed, the Bills and the Bucs, what are they, Ben? They are both home teams heading into this game tonight. And if we're looking at Super Wildcard Weekend, home teams 3-1 outright here this weekend. It's hard to win on the road in the NFL. And quite frankly, you're home in the first round for a reason, Ben. It means you're the better football team here. You won your division, and you should be favored, at least be in this game. Bills and Bucs plus 171. It's where I voted. Not what I'm rooting. It's where I voted.
But the difference being the Buccaneers, unlike the Bills, not a home favorite. That would be Philly on the road. Plenty more to come when hour 3 starts in less than a minute.